Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvelously well. We're back with another frequently asked questions. As ever, please hit that subscribe button and the subscribe bell. You can go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. We've got a very eclectic set of questions this week, and the first one is this. If a singer sings in B-flat major in the verses, but the choruses are sung in A minor, would I have to tune all the sounds according to each section to match the vocals? I'm assuming you don't mean just a chord, just grab the guitar. Because if the verse was sung over a B-flat, and then the chorus was in A minor, it depends on whether you mean the chord or a chord sequence, i.e. B-flat major chord sequence, so like a 1, 4, 5, which would be a B-flat, E-flat, F. And then as opposed to a 1, 4, 5 in the chorus, which of course would be, if it's a minor key, A minor, D minor, and E minor. So the answer is, would you have to tune the chords? Not entirely sure what you mean, but yes, they're two different keys if they're talking about keys. But melodically, if I had like a, you know what I mean? I could still have a melody that works over both chords. Yeah. And if it was a 1, 4, 5, for instance, in each key, the great thing is like, you've got A minor, you could go ba, 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 which is the 5 of the B flat. So my point is there's no rules. My point is that, yeah, you can make it work. You can play an F major and make it fit in both of those two particular keys. There's ways to make transitions feel good. That's the great thing about doing music. Some of the simple tricks that you learn are like leaps. For the longest time in the 90s, everything was a 5-1 transition. You'd have songs, pick up the guitar again. You'd have songs that were like 1, 5, 2, 4, 1. And then that might be the verse, and then the transition for the pre-chorus would have been 4, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and then back to the 1. There was so many 90s songs that did 4, 5 pre-choruses. I got so old. Then of course the 2000s hit, and everything suddenly became 6, 4, 1, 5, 6, 4, 1, 5. And if that was your, in B flat, it could be, 1, 6, 4, 5, 5 minor. You get my point. You can transition, you can make anything work. You really can. That's the great thing about what we do, is it's acquired knowledge, it's a bit of a skill, it's okay. It's really just wonderful. Nothing is impossible when it comes to music. Some of the best music makes almost no sense. Have you ever tried playing Life on Mars by Bowie? It doesn't really, it does have, but it doesn't really seem to feel like it has a solid key. It seems like it's completely changing all the time. Try playing Beethoven. You play Beethoven well, it's the rubato, it means it has no time. Like the tempo does this. This is the beauty of music. You can do whatever the heck you like, and with production these days being so much more available on laptops, having a DAW, the virtual instruments, you can frickin' just do whatever you want. It's a blessing. So whatever you're feeling here, yes, that actually B flat major and A minor as two separate keys for verses and choruses, not a problem at all. If it sounds good, if the melody works over it, go for it. I'd love to hear it. So yes, yes, and yes. When would you go for an analog delay versus a digital delay? Basically, a digital delay is an incredibly, if not completely accurate facsimile of the sound. You would traditionally think of a digital delay, a modern digital delay, as pretty much repeating the exact sound. Analog delays were sort of mock-ups, trying to speak as naively as possible, just a way of reproducing the same sound fairly approximately. When I think of it, I think of being a kid and buying the Boss DM, I think DM1, DM2, DM3 analog delays, and then the DD delays, the digital delays coming out. And the difference was massive. Those analog delays, which seemed to sound a little bit dull, and then suddenly the digital came in and they felt like, as we were saying before, like incredible facsimiles. However, that isn't entirely true. You can buy old digital delays, which have 4 and 8-bit resolutions. And those, as the repeats go on, tend to decay and distort and just deteriorate, is probably a better word, deteriorate. And that's pretty musical. So you can have like a gang, 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 and they'll just decay into like weird kind of digital distortion, deterioration again. I love that. So there isn't really a one-size-fits-all answer. For me, analog delays and low bit rate digital delays will probably be in the same world for me. They're like when I want a delay to add color. When I think of like early Edge guitar, he was using the DM series before the DD delays come out. And there's something unique about his guitar parts because it's not like cling, cling, it's not like an identical sound. It's like a warmth underneath. Another thing with like tape delays would do the same thing as well. But modern digital delay is like complete, accurate facsimile, which is great. But if you can, try using analog delays or analog modeling delays. Try using old digital modeling, for 4 and 8-bit technology, because it adds something a little bit more special than an accurate facsimile. Because otherwise, quite frankly, you can repeat things in your DAW anyway. You could take a vocal, and I've done it many times, like the last word, like, I don't know, no, and I can just sit there and repeat it and then draw a volume down. I can literally go, in Pro Tools, I can highlight it, go Option R, and then do 12, and it'll just go, and put 12 in, then put a volume down, and just go, no. And that's not that inspiring. A messed up early digital delay, or analog, or tape echo, they add a different spice, they add a different texture. So I answered in a long form because I feel like I want to know the reason why you'd want to know. I believe, honestly, wrongness is what makes things great. So that's why I like the old analog delays. In fact, now in the back of my mind during this whole discussion, I'm thinking about going on eBay and buying one of those original Boss DM series delays because they were fantastic. And they were what the Edge was using, and they were what a lot of the guitar players that we grew up influenced were using. So I wonder if they're going to rocket in price now. When you place the instruments in a room, do you mix differently depending on the number of instruments you're recording? Do you, for instance, enhance the stereo width of the drums when recording a trio, while choosing mono drums if there are a lot of instruments? Any thumb rules? Any thumb rules? That's very, very interesting. I think if it's, when you say a trio, if you mean a jazz band trio, then I'll keep it exactly like the room. I'll throw up a Bloom line or a stereo XY or something that accurately captures the sound of a jazz band in the room, a trio. And then if I have close mics on instruments, I pan them exactly as I see them, keep the phase there. And yes, it's amazing. One of the things I found really interesting when we talk about rock and roll was when I read Jaquar King doesn't pan his drums super wide. And I actually enjoyed that. I found a lot of the times I'm taking my overheads from hard left and right and just bringing them in like 60, 70, 80, somewhere around there. I feel like that actually gives my drums their own space. And then if I want to go LCR on my guitars, I can put one super far right and super far left. And you'll notice my left is your right and my right is your left. Anyway, I can put those guitars super wide and the drums sort of sit here. And then there's been a big move, and I'm really loving this, of using mono effects, like using mono delays and mono reverbs and placing them directly under the instrument. For instance, I've got into a lot quite recently of using mono reverb. So you put a vocal down the middle and a mono verb. A lot of the recordings that we grew up loving, especially the classic 50s and 60s, like Motown, stuff like that, were mono plates. They weren't stereo plates, and they were printing it. So they take the lead vocal and then print the reverb on it down the middle. And it has a very, very unique sound. So I would say if you're recording members of a band in a room, whether it be jazz or acoustic or a live band playing, keep the symmetry. Keep it exactly how you hear it. Which means if there's a guitar amp over here and another guitar amp over there and a drum kit in the middle, do that. Pan the drums 60, 70, 80, pan the guitars wide. But there are no rules when you're dealing with bands that are just overdubbing. There's no rules. There is no rules. We were listening to Wichita Lineman early this evening, and the drums are entirely in the right speaker. And then the strings are mainly over to the left. And then Glenn Campbell's vocal is dry as a bone, no effects. Down the middle, sounding more modern than anything else recorded. I mean, it was a beautiful recording. It's all of the greatest LA players, the Wrecking Crew. I mean, just like the best players. And it's a beautiful recording. Everything is wrong with that. Drums on only one side? But put a pair of headphones on, listen to Wichita Lineman, listen to Galveston, listen to By the Time I Get to Phoenix, any of the American trilogy, and just get lost in just how beautiful that music is and how timeless it is, because even though it sounds like maybe old-fashioned, no music sounded like that at the time. That was Jimmy Webb, an incredible writer. The point is like once you get out of a band in a room, jazz musicians in a room, being recorded live, there are no bets. So I think you just do whatever you want. And go and listen to stuff like that when they were discovering stereo and they were getting more experimental. It's interesting how they're more experimental now with 4 to 8 tracks than we are now with 192. Let's talk about that one. I was wondering about the reasoning behind the 2 different slopes when you're using high and low pass on the reverb. It's a simple, I mean, honestly, the more aggressive slopes, when you've got a softer slope and more aggressive, is really as obvious as it seems. You know, it's going to high and low pass a little bit more gently. You know, an incredibly tight slope will probably still let a little tiny whisper of low and high information through, but essentially as you soften it up, more high, more low comes through. It's really as simple as that. I tend to like high and low passes, you know, quite a lot, you know, or when necessary, especially in the low end, to clean it up so that the kick and the bass guitar and the low end instruments breathe. If you don't need it, get rid of it. You don't have to come up super high, but a lot of instruments don't need 80 and 100 on. Once you clean up that low area, your bass guitar will sing, the mud will go, the kick drum will come through. However, it doesn't always have to be this. A gentle slope will create enough room. That's actually the way to go. Start with gentle slopes on your high and low pass filter and only get them a little bit more aggressive. I feel like I always start with a nice gentle slope, and then if I'm listening to my mix and maybe the kick and the bass guitar are like just overlapping a little bit too much and I'm not feeling enough definition, I don't suddenly like bring it up. I would just tighten the slope slightly. I'll just increase that high passing just a little bit more. Sometimes you don't have to do much. You can just take it like 3 dB on that slope and suddenly it's like, whoa, my bass guitar just came to life and so did my kick. You know. So that's the reasoning behind it. It's just like, are you just blending them together like this or are you separating them completely? I'm not big on separating them completely. I might do that with an aggressive slope, maybe with some synths. So I'm trying to slot some synths together. They're like really crowded. I might slot them into each other. But if it's like bass guitars, keyboards, I'm using gentle slopes to just carve out a little room. If you could get one plugin suite or one plugin to help you most with enhancing a mix, what would you recommend? What is the best deal in your opinion? Oh, wow, that is a leading question if ever I'd be incriminating myself. That is a really tough one. I really do believe that everybody makes a plugin of value. And some companies make several plugins of value. I think if you're talking about subscriptions, the Mac DSP subscription, I think is really good because they have analog modeling plugins, but they also have plugins which have super details, and they have reverbs and delays and everything. So you can get with Mac DSP like a really amazing sound, but you can also get into super detailed stuff as well. Slate, again, similar stuff. They do a lot. They definitely have a lot of like modeling stuff. They've got the Neves and the SSL sounds, even though they don't call them that. We know that's what they're doing. Slate's de-esser is freaking amazing. You've seen me use it. It's really, really smart. See, there's my point. There's two companies already that make two great products. Waves, the MV2 is my go-to plugin. I absolutely love that. I love the R bass. It's incredible on toms as well as bass guitar. I know that quite a few people use it on a kick drum. I love the Sonic stuff, the Oxford stuff, the old Sonic stuff is fantastic. I've only recently been getting into it, and it is amazing. IK Multimedia, T-Rax, their whole breakdown of all the T-Rax stuff. Well, I mean, like, I don't know where to begin. I feel like I like to cherry pick between those companies, but I could I could definitely mix only using one of those companies. I do like 90% modeling and generic big movements like compressors, EQs that boost and cut, generically. But then about 10% of the time, I need specialist plugins, which is MV2s, which is the inflator by Sonox, and EQs that have really, really fine points. So it's kind of a tough one. It's like 90% of the time you could get away with, most of the bundles, but then just to push it over the edge, I don't think I could live without the MV2. Certainly couldn't live without the R bass. And I really like the inflator. That's going to come into a lot of our mixes too. So there's like these handful of ones. And then T-Rax, it's tough. I don't know, there's no one that I cannot tell you. I'd be lying to tell you there is a one size fits all. I think if you've got any kind of budget, then I think owning all the waves is fantastic. I think owning all of them. The point is like you're better off using a lot of different plugins and learning what works for you. Primarily, learn your plugins that come with your DAW. Exhaust them. Find out what you're missing and what you need. And you'll probably find it's plugins like the MV2 and the R bass that will come up first because they're real game changers. And hopefully your DAW has really, really detailed plugins that can sit there and pull out like certain frequencies. That's the sort of stuff I'd be looking for, So you've got to learn your own plugins first and then find out what you need and then gravitate towards the companies that are making the kinds of plugins that you think you could really benefit from. Sorry for such a long answer, but I think it's a very, very difficult question to answer. I can't say one size fits all. I really can't. For me, I've been blessed to try a lot of stuff that I do think being able to cherry pick between lots of plugins, I think is the best way to go personally. And learn your stock plugins. A friend's dad and I were thinking about trying to do a Pro Tools project where more than one user on Pro Tools and separate machines can work on a session together. I was wondering if you've ever done one of these before, and if so, when it came time to mix, how does the mixing process work? What happens if I use plugins that he doesn't own or vice versa? I've done this a gazillion times. I do this every day. We just went and tracked at Sunset, and we have overdubs here, and we also went to Harmony. It's 3 different studios, all working on the same project. When I go to an actual studio, or in your case, a room that maybe has drums that you want to record drums in, I don't know if your friend's dad has a better environment for recording drums. I tend to make it all about the recording. If you open up that session we did of the last 2 days from Sunset Sound, you won't find any plugins on the recording. The reason why I'm in a studio to record great drums and bass is so I can use the outboard. So I don't have that much of a problem opening that session up here. However, as you're pointing out, the biggest problem is going to come down to mixing. If you both want to work on the same mix, I don't know if I'd actually advocate that. I don't think I would. I think individually, if it's like a 5-song project or a 3-song project, take a different song each and mix it and then help each other out, give each other notes. I think the way everybody hears individual elements is so different, but we can all get to similar places. That's what's interesting. You can get a great mix from 10 different great mixers, and they can all be on the same record, but they will have subtle ways of getting from A to B. One guy might really believe that 50 hertz boost on a kick drum is the best thing. I know people that think that. I usually go for about 60. Over at Crystal Algae's, he has a pair of Poltecs on his master bus, which boosts at 70. So he's going there. Now, my point is like if Crystal Algae mixed a song for an album and so did Neil Avron, they could both be on the same album. They're both incredible mixers. Neil has mixed some of the best sounding records of the last 10 or 20 years. But I don't know if Crystal Algae and Neil Avron would both work on the same session because they are different ways of getting that sound. They will both achieve a really amazing result, but they're in different ways. So I personally would advocate that you both mix independently and then help each other out. Give each other notes on, like, you mix a song, you send it to him, he comes back and says, I need a bit more bass guitar. And then, the vocal's too quiet. Then it's up to you to get that vocal up in volume or presence and get the bass more predominant in the mix in the way that works for you, as opposed for somebody leaning into your mix and doing it for you, because then it might change a lot of the relationships of other instruments. I think as far as tracking is concerned, it's easy to go backwards and forwards, but mixing's a little bit personal. I haven't mixed many songs with somebody over my shoulder, and when I have, it's been difficult because they may get obsessed about something minor, which is unimportant, or they might not agree with something being major that I think is major. And that is pretty difficult pill to swallow. If I'm working on an acoustic guitar vocal sound before introducing the rest of the band, because I inherently feel the song is driven from the acoustic guitar and the vocal, but the singer who's sitting behind me can't stand the acoustic guitar part on the record, how am I going to mix that song? I'm building it around the groove. I remember we were working with the Thrills with Dave Sardi. The piano player's feel was phenomenal. So when I was given the record to edit and they were handing me tracks, I edited the drummer to the feel of the piano player because he had this groove and this push and pull. The drummer was on 90% of the time, but when he drifted off, I looked to the piano player. What's he doing? Let's make it groove with him. That was my Bible. My Bible was that piano track. It was phenomenal. And that made editing interesting and easier for me because that album was not cut to a click. So I needed something that we liked the feel of. So you get my point, is like you're creating a soundscape that's very personal understanding. Now, if I'd handed that drive to somebody else, they may have gone, oh my, this is amazing. Oh my God, I can't believe they didn't cut to a click, and then straighten the whole track out. There's no one size fits all. I've said that 3 times now, I think, maybe 4. I personally would work on the tracks mutually, but then mix independently and give each other advice on how to improve, but mix it on your own. Just take advice from each other, take notes. That's my personal opinion. You can all agree with me or disagree with me. Comments and questions below. What controller do you use to switch between your Genelix, iLouds, and Callies and the Focals? It is called the Switch Witch. It is a Proco Switch Witch, and I love it. It's really freaking cool. It sounds fantastic. It doesn't seem to add any noise to it, and I can switch between all of my different speakers. We have 4 switches there with 4 speaker options. I'm going to put a 4th one up there, and then we have the Genelecs are currently being borrowed, but we have the baby Genelecs and the iLouds over underneath the monitor, and we have actually a 8 volume controls which goes to headphones and go to speakers, so we can control the speakers there. So that is home built. So you've got a home built headphone distribution box with 8 outputs, actually built by Phil Allen's dad. Phil Allen's dad. He built that. He was a great guy. Okay, but the Switch Witch is great. Highly recommend it. Link below somewhere. How would you go about mixing drums recording with only one mic, especially when you can barely hear anything but the cymbals in the mix? I did answer this in fact, I've answered most of these underneath the videos, but I do like them being cherry picked for me because this is a really good question. If you only have one mic on the drum kit, two things. In Pro Tools, in that DAW, we have a plugin called a lo-fi, where you can choose to distort the high frequencies or the low frequencies first. So if you distort the high frequencies first, they tend to fold into it. So the low stuff comes through. So your kick and your snare will come back to life. So using saturation on it can be your friend. I don't mean going to full overdrive, but if you just start to saturate it gently, Klanghelm is a wonderful plugin. The Klanghelm MJUC, use that because you can go dark or light with that compressor and you can also saturate. That would help you. And I believe that's like $27 or $29. Klanghelm MJUC, fantastic plugin. Any saturation will do the job. I think the Sans amp would be too, like taking a sledgehammer to it, but most saturations, Decapitator would work great. Tape delays with a bit of saturation on them could be really good as well. Like tape emulations, I should say, not tape delays. Now, the other thing I do all the time on drum mixes where they're really super aggressive is put a de-esser across it. Room mics are great with de-essers on it, where the guys and the snare's like, you know, put a de-esser across it, get that 3 to 5K range, start ducking it down. Before you know it, the snare's coming out. So de-essers and saturators. That would be my top two picks, but check out the Klanghelm MJUC. It's really fantastic plugin. I was wondering if there's anything that tells you the tempo of the song in Pro Tools beside tap tempo, or is tap tempo good enough? There are a million different plugins. I have used my whole life, since like 90 something, when I first bought Waves Platinum, I have always used the tap tempo function on the multi-tap delay. You go to the multi-tap delay and you've got pattern and tempo, and you put it to tempo and then click the whole song, and it takes an average of the whole time you've been tapping. That to me is a secret weapon. Actually, there's 2 or 3 guys I know that do the same thing. It will give you the tempo of the average time you've been tapping. If I'm sitting in a room working with an artist on pre-production and we tap the whole time, it doesn't matter whether they started at 80 and finished at 87, it will give me the average tempo of that time. It seems to always work for me. As you're pointing out or intimating, when you use the tap tempo function in Pro Tools on the transport, it just does the bar and then resets, which is not going to help you. Now, I'm sure, and please answers on a postcard, questions and comments below, I'm sure there's other plugins that do the same function as the multi-tap delay. However, the multi-tap delay has been my go-to. And not only can I tell you it works, it works. It's how we got tempo for You Found Me. It's how we got tempo for half of Aerosmith's last record. It's like I use it on everything. It doesn't matter. It's like it doesn't differentiate between baby band, local musician, or rock star. It is a really, really good device. Highly recommend it. It's another good reason to use that tap tempo, because those modulation delays with a tap tempo function in Waves are really, really good. I've always had a good time with them. I like the way they're designed. They're very intuitive and do a really, really good job. All right, thank you ever so much. Wonderful questions as ever. This one's super eclectic, all over the place, loads of different things. Don't be afraid to do that. Ask anything you like. You know, as you can tell, I'm a musician, a songwriter, as well as a producer, engineer, mixer dude. So I like the guitar stuff as well. And we'll have some more fun. I think that next year, you're going to see a lot more Warren playing guitar and things, because I love it. And when it comes to like shout out, Scott Baxendale with the harmony conversions, I'm just going to give him another shout out. We gave him a shout out last week. It's absolutely beautiful. He currently has my silver tone, demolished by Delta, and it had tape all over it. Check him out. His name's Scott Baxendale, Baxendale Guitars, and also harmony conversion. Harmony and K conversion. Check his stuff out. He's super talented and great guitar player, does beautiful things with guitars. I'll always give a shout out to talented people. Thank you ever so much for watching. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Please leave us a bunch of comments and questions. Go through this week's videos. Is there any stuff you want to talk about? Always happy to answer anything. Thank you for being a big part of the community, and have a marvelous time recording and mixing.